ギャルアップが1944年2月に実施した意識調査によりますと、カナダ人の 80% が邦人の本国送還を支持していたとされています。しかしながらカナダ生まれの日系人の国外追放を支持したのは 33% にとどまるものとなっていました。この後4月に政府は日系人を国内各地に分散させる方針を固め、カナダ生まれの日系人に対しカナダへの忠誠心の有無を問い、忠誠心を示す者のみ在留を認めるとした提案を可決しました。しかしながら日系人を国内から排斥する姿勢が強かったこともあり、キング首相により最終的な承認が行われたのは4ヶ月後の8月4日となりました。
I came to Toronto, and but it was very difficult because the war was still on, and as soon as they heard I was a Jap, and I had worked at the Royal Bank for 3 years in Vancouver, and so I had a lot of good references from all the managers and everybody. So the first thing they came to Toronto, I went to the Royal Bank of Canada head office, and they sent me to the personnel manager, and I walked in, and the personnel manager looked at me, and he says, "Are you a Jap?" And I said, "Yes." "Get out." Just like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was very humiliating. Yeah. So, but the war was on, the feelings were very, very high in Toronto. It was very, very difficult when I first came to Toronto in April 1943. The war was still on, even to find a place to live, I had a heck of a time. I walked up and down, up and down, up and down.
We went to Vernon before the war ended, and by that time the government was trying to encourage people to start dispersing away from the relocation centers. And so we lived in Vernon for 1945 to 49, at which time when the offer was made to give you a free ride east, we took it, and we came to Toronto. And so most of my siblings are all living in Toronto. And I went to my high school in Toronto, took my university training at U of T, and I started working in Ottawa, or in Toronto, the year after I graduated. And I worked unfortunately, at the complex, or the group consortium, which was building the Avro Arrow at that time. And they got canceled a year after I started working. So I lost my job a year after graduation. And having worked as a student in Ottawa a couple of summers in the 50s, I was able to get a job in Ottawa. And I worked from 1959 to 1991 at the National Research Council as an engineer.
Because they were concerned about the education of the kids and so forth, the main reason they decided we have to get out, and the only way to get out was to say, okay, we'll go east, whether Alberta or Manitoba, Ontario, or whatever, you see. And they ended up going to western Ontario, to St. Thomas, Ontario, south of London. And of all places, ex-Premier Mitchell Hepburn's big Bannockburn Farms, 100-acre farm, mixed farming, dairy and cattle and everything else, and onions and so forth. And so he needed all kinds of workers. And again, he had a couple of white guys there who had got agricultural deferment, but otherwise he used Japanese Canadian, families, and our family was perfect with all these males, you see, and so forth. So that's where we went, and I left the New Canadian in March '44 and joined the family, and for about a year, I was also a farm hand. But see, most of the families who went through that had been farm families back in the coast, but we were city families, but city family. But because Dad was a landscape gardener, at least we knew a little bit about dirt and handling dirt and so forth. Anyhow, so there we were, the city hicks. We had to learn how to milk cows, but the main thing I remember, because some of the other guys who were there had more experience in farming, and guys like me who knew for nothing had to pitch manure on a daily basis. And because it was a big, huge, complicated farm with horses, cattle, chickens, pigs, and so forth, we got to be, I got to be an expert on the different kinds of manure.
日系人の分散に伴い、人々はロッキー山脈より東側の地への移動が命じられましたが、日系人が職を得るのは非常に困難で、その多くが当時人材不足が生じていた天才シュガービーツ畑に身を置く状況が見られていました。
At the time of the war, we lived on my grandfather's farm. We had our own house there, and he had his own. And at that time, it was there were some recruiters in from Manitoba, sugar beet growers, who were looking for people to go on work on farms because there was a shortage of labor. And I guess they made arrangements with the federal government that rather than sending people to internment camps, they could be sent to sugar beet fields. And so essentially in 1942, in May, that's when we came to Manitoba. And my parents, my grandparents, and then a friend of my grandfather's all came together. And so we were placed on a sugar beet farm in St. Agas, Manitoba, which is approximately about 50 kilometers from Winnipeg. It was a 4-room home, and there were basically three families living there. And by that time, I had 2 other siblings. And so there were, when you think of all the adults and the young kids living in this small house, not insulated, no running water, no electricity, it was just a house. And so we stayed there for only a year because I think it was too difficult. And so finally we were able to rent a house in the town. And so we stayed there for the 2nd year. But by that time, my father, because farming is sort of a very temporary kind of thing, and basically they earned a living by working how many hours a day, that type of thing. And to survive on 25 cents an hour for a family, you couldn't do it. So he had to leave us and find a job elsewhere. So he came into Winnipeg, got special permission. Finally, he found a job at a machine shop here. And so he had to live by himself in Winnipeg, whereas we lived on the farm. Because at that time, people could not move into the city. It was out of bounds, and so you had to have special permission to be able to do that. So,
well, my dad was sent out to Yellowhead, the road camp. Several other males were sent with him. Yeah. But there he learned that if he wanted to stay with a family, he said you could apply for a sugar beet farm, either in Alberta or Manitoba. So he chose Alberta. And fortunately, they were very nice people. And there were lots of other Japanese down there too. Some that I knew, and they're around surrounding areas, Iron Spring, there were a lot of Japanese around there too. Right. Yeah. Because Picky Butte had a sugar factory. You could see from way to the horizon and nothing but beets.
Sea Island got their notice to relocate in June.
Okay, so June.
Middle of June somewhere. But we left earlier, on May the 19th. Okay. And we came to Alberta on the 21st of May. Okay. And our destination was to Welling, Alberta.
Welling. What's that?
It's about 18 miles south of Lethbridge.
Oh, okay.
It's an elevator town, village actually, not a town, between McGrath. Do you know where McGrath is? And Raymond, right in the middle.
Okay.
Right by the elevators. And we worked there for 4 years, and we were at a farm, a Mormon farmer, Don Wild, and he was very kind to us. Good. And he accommodated us very well. Oh, good. And very happy. We were fortunate than the other people because we had a running water right outside our house. Right. Other people had to haul about a quarter mile or so on buckets for water and so on. But we were one of the fortunate family that had running water. But my brother and my family had no intention of working on the farm, so as soon as they were able to get out of there after 4 years, restriction was lifted, so I came to Calgary, and I think I made the right choice at that time. Yeah. And one of the person that I really owe my career is one of my teachers, Arthur Miller, and I wrote a story about him. I submitted to the papers, and he was a veteran from the last war, and however, he gave me free room and board until I was able to find a place.
なんとか仕事を得られたものの、過酷な労働を強いられるケースが多く、加えて与えられた家屋には水道が引かれていなかったり、厳しい越冬を強いられたりなど、快適な生活環境を得るにはかなりの困難が生じていました。
We moved over to another person's farm or sugar beet, and then in those days they didn't have a loader, okay? So like they do have now. What he did is after we cut the sugar beets, he hand shoveled it from the ground to the flatbed, and from the flatbed onto the truck. Wow. 6 tons or something like that, you know. They were very, very hard workers. Wow. You know, so the house was very small. It wasn't insulated. I can't remember how cold it was. This was like in May of 1942. And then, if I may talk a little bit more, like I went to school, I was in grade 4, and they ignored me completely.
Is that right?
Yeah, so I think it was the bus driver who said, you better stay home. So I stayed home, and finally in October, I think it was, they sent me a letter saying that I can start school, but I could, they upgraded my grade from grade 4 to grade 5.
In Japanese, to be interned is like being put in prison, which is a shame, haji. And so we decided that we'd sooner opt to go to the sugar beet farms as farmers. Father was outside of the 100-mile area at that time. And so he was hired by a fellow from England who was sent over here by his parents to start a business so that he wouldn't be so that he wouldn't have to join the army. And so Dad was working for him, built the sawmill for him, and they started to work for them. So he wasn't exiled or interned like we were. And so we went to the prairies to see half of Canada. My sisters opted to do that. I have 2 older sisters, or 3 older sisters, and 2 younger brothers. So we went to Manitoba, and it was a completely, change of life that I had, because all of a sudden I had to grow up because I was more or less considered the man of the family, even at age 10. Mother used to scold me a lot, but a lot of the scolding ended when we went to Manitoba, luckily.
Our mother was ill, so they somehow, she was moved, taken by ambulance to Vancouver. We didn't know where exactly until sometime later. We were evacuated to McGrath, I don't know if you know where that is. This is south of Lethbridge on a sugar beet farm.
Okay.
And we found out she was shipped to a hospital in Sandon, near Denver. It was an old, from what I was told, is a old silver mine ghost town. And they built, or whether there was a hospital there or not, I don't know. This was it. Then it was just after Christmas, day after Christmas, that we got word that in 1943 that she had died. Yeah, there was six of us on the beet farm there with her dad. And the farm work wasn't that as hard as what we used to do in BC. Because we worked every day in BC and clearing the land, actually. But life was, work-wise, was not as tough, but living there was tougher. For us to know, come to a bald prairie, like where we were, and cold, the winter cold, snow.
1945年8月16日、日本の降伏とともに敵国者として拘束されていた人々が後日解放されましたが、日系人に対しては引き続き戦時体制が維持され、 BC 州へ戻ることは許されず、収容所を去る人々はまさに気の身気のままで新たな生活の模索を強いられる状況はさらに続きました。
When we all moved to East, see, the government has confiscated everything. We had very little, so everybody in the family had to work to get a roof over their heads. But so some of the students never got back to school, and but in spite of everything, you know, we made it. And so at first we bought a house with my parents, and it must have been a Jewish school because there was a bench outside on the porch, and it had up to third floor. And so when our friends came from out west, needed a place to live, we shared the house with them. You know, and this is the way we managed. I guess this is what happens to new immigrants too, isn't it? But the only people that would hire us were Italians and Jewish people.
My uncle was able to support a family of mother and 7 kids to sponsor us to come to Toronto. So in 1947, my brother came about 2 months ahead of time and got a job at a Jewish firm, cleaning company, you know, where they press shirts and do laundry work. And he got a job there. And then we came on the train to Toronto in 1947, May to 1947. Yeah. So that's where I think I found pressure, because up to then it was quite a nice life as a young kid. I was 12 years old when I got here, you know, and it was a new adventure again, you know, because we lived in Cabbagetown, which is the slum area of Toronto. And the house that we lived in was only a 3-room house on a 5-room, like there was 5 rooms or 7 rooms, I think, but we got 3 little rooms, smaller than the house we had in the internment camp. And there was 8 of us living there, and with just cold water, no tub. Okay, so we had to take a tub bath, you know, every day, and once a week we go and take a shower at the public bathhouse. But during the time we had to find a job because there's no welfare. So my brother was working, my second oldest brother, they both quit school and worked. My mother found a job at St. Michael's. My brother Edgar and I, he was 11, I was 12, we found jobs selling papers at a corner, downtown Toronto. And I ended up getting one of the hottest corner
4 years went very fast. And then Japan lost the war. And of course, during the war, we had no radio or no paper. The government didn't give us any access to that, so we didn't know what condition Japan was.
Wow.
And after taking all our house away and selling it off, they said, we don't want you back in British Columbia, so you go over the Rockies to Ontario or Alberta, or we'll pay your way to Japan. My mom's thought was, there's nobody to support the family, the big family she has, and she didn't speak English very well, and she's never really worked that, you know, in the public area.
Yeah.
So she decided, my mother's in Japan, so I'm going to go take my kids. And we had no choice because I was still under 16 and to, you know, follow her rules.
Yeah.
In a way, I was a little bit excited because I thought, well, this is a new life, you know.
Yeah.
What's it going to be? Is it going to be a real nice place to go, you know? So we got on the bus and we were brought into CPR there, and then from there we loaded, it was June 1946 that we loaded got on to the General Meg and went to Japan. And we docked in a place called Uraga, and when we got off the boat, the first meal was like a gruel. It was like a pig food. And I threw up, most of us threw up after eating that. And then the train to Wakayama, this is where my parents came from, small fishing village. So during the trip from Uraga to Wakayama, you could see all the people bombed out, and there were still dead horses around, and people living under a broken down shack that they made out, and they were, you know, making fire outside and eating outside. And my mom said, what did I do now, you know? But it's too late.
Yeah.
Then when we got to my grandma's village, grandma had passed away, and there was no place for us to go.